to think twice about. Better technology is better business. Call today to see why millions of small businesses use Dell at 1-877-414-DELL. 1-877-414-DELL.
You wouldn't want your meal shipped from another continent. Why would you want your favorite radio station streamed from across the globe? That's why AM 790 created a super cool app that not only allows you to stream our best shows and music, but it also gives you access to great local deals like half off top restaurants, concerts, and more. Just go to 790business.com and download our groovy cool app. Keep it local, keep it simple, keep it connected with 790business.com.
And you are listening to the Coalition live on AM 790, your source for news and business, right out of here, out of snowy Providence, Rhode Island. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and of course our blog at coalitionradio.us. I'm joined by my co-host Dave Fisher. Dave, we're going to jump right back into it. We've got about a half hour to spend here with Carla. Carla Howes joins us from the Libertarian Party of the United States of America. She is the policy director, or I will refer to sometimes as the political director. Carla, again, thanks for taking time on a Sunday morning to perform an intervention here in the heart of, blue state madness.
My pleasure.
I want to. Russell Moore, another writer for Go Local Prov, tweeted in a question, and I guess he objected to your use of the term "starving the beast" and questioned my belief in that. First of all, for the record, that's a term I love and embrace. I use it all the time because I do believe that the government of the state of Rhode Island, in particular, is a cancer and needs to be starved, and either a medically or shall we say. Like Mothra or some of those beasts from the Japanese horror movies. So I do completely embrace that.
You long for the immolation of the moth that is Rhode Island in the flame of the gas lamp.
Exactly. Now, Carla, one of the frequent objections to the notion of starving the beast or cutting back government is that libertarians are quote unquote selfish. That they'll if you're a fan of Ayn Rand as I am, that they'll ascribe to a certain they'll cast stones at the maturity level of the individual libertarian because of their desire not to be part of the collective. What do you say to that?
I'd say they've got that 180 degrees wrong. Myself and many libertarians I know who've gotten into the movement and into the party do so out of concerns for their family, concerns for the world at large. People who are non-interventionists, who don't like us dropping bombs on other people, people who don't like the high crime rates in this country, a lot of which can be attributed to the war on drugs, very failed drug prohibition, in my case, health care, and my concern that people are not getting the treatment they need to save their lives and relieve their suffering. It is very much an altruistic movement, especially when you compare it to the Democrats and Republicans. The people who show up to conventions there, the delegates, most of them, not all, most of the politicians, especially at the level of state legislature or higher, they're all very selfish, greedy people who, in so much as, they're probably nice people, and on a personal level they tend to be pretty personable, but they are motivated by stature, by monetary rewards, by power. The libertarians want to make government small so no one has this power to rule over anyone's lives. They don't get any payback. They're not looking for government jobs and government contracts and handouts and pensions and bailouts. We're doing the long shot, the long range game. It's a long-term process to shrink government. Many of us may not live, and many libertarians I've known have died. Did not get to see in their lifetime tremendous progress that we all want so much, but we do it in the hope for our children, our posterity, our children's children, that they will see a freer world, a better world, a safer world, a more prosperous world, and there's no immediate payback, and believe me, it's a tough road for many libertarian candidates. They do it out of a very selfless desire to help people and make society better.
Can you speak to the concept, it's very important here at our local Libertarian Party, the concept of volunteerism and how integral that is to the libertarian movement?
Well, almost all the true libertarian candidates, and this is probably also true of those rare Republican candidates where you have a true liberty Republican who actually wants to shrink government, relatively rare, People work hard. They put in, a lot of our candidates have put in their own money in their campaigns. Very few people can make money in the business of shrinking government. There's no government spoils to be had. We don't want there to be any government spoils to be had. It is a true grassroots movement that depends heavily and almost entirely on volunteers.
Now, it's interesting you say that in terms of the money angle, because one of the alarming rises and changes, if you will, or sea changes in American politics has been the rise of the Democratic Party in Wall Street. And one realizes that it's not some out of misguided altruistic sense of controlling the beast of Wall Street, but it's really a recognition by the Democratic Party of just how much money there is to be made off the day-to-day machinations of a socially engineered government, whether it be health care, retirement benefits, privatized Social Security, any one of those issues, there's money there to be made. You brought up truly what I believe, this is my personal reflection, obviously I'm not going to project this onto you, but what to me is a political obscenity, and that is the notion of the Liberty Republican, or that is we recently had the most recent, now departed, head of the Republican Party refer to themselves as a libertarian idealized Republican on talk radio here. What do you think of, what does that speak to you when they talk about liberty Republicans?
Well, I know a few good Republicans across the country. I know the ones who are really fighting to get Ron Paul nominated from the floor of the convention in Tampa a couple of years ago and got their heads handed to them by the Republican power elites. There's some good people really trying to change things within the Republican Party. Good luck to them. We really are rooting for them, but that's an even harder battle than running as a libertarian, which is a hard battle. The thing is, most of the people in the Republican Party that call themselves liberty or libertarian they like the label. At some level, I'm sure they believe it, but in fact, their actions support the big government power structures in the Republican Party. They end up endorsing, whether it's Jeb Bush, George Bush, Mitt Romney, John McCain, their respective governors. They fall in line with the party line, and they endorse big government Republicans and sort of play along to get along. And yet they make very little progress in actually electing anyone who's small government. When they do, they're pretty much powerless, and you occasionally get a Ron Paul, you get a Justin Amash or Massey in Kentucky that are way better than, dramatically better than the rest of the Republicans in there, and some have real bona fides like Ron Paul in terms of being libertarian. He was our libertarian presidential nominee in 1988. But for the most part, Republicans, including your establishment Republicans, like to pretend they're libertarian, pretend they're fiscal conservatives, pretend they're for getting rid of business regulations. For the most part, they are indistinguishable from the Democrats. They are voting for essentially the same bills. They line up in blocks for certain bills that has a Republican or Democratic name on it, but their overall voting records are virtually indistinguishable. They are voting for higher budgets, higher taxes, more regulations, more wars, and more government pretty much across the board.
Well, but Carla, isn't that political pandering at its absolute worst? I'm a member of the Green Party, and I feel it every 2, 4, or 6 years, depending on what office is coming up for election. The quote progressive Democrats come out and beg for, you might have a guy in the race, but what are the chances of winning? And really, and the specter of the stealing the election, the spoiling of the election, and allowing the big bad Republican to get into office, and they just pander to people's fears.
Absolutely,
basically.
They do. That's their trump card that they use. They use the so-called spoiler argument routinely every election, and what voters need to realize, they need to see the fraud and the manipulation of that, because what happens when you vote for a Democrat or Republican is you are giving them authorization. Your vote gives them license to continue to vote for more government, whether it's more violations of our civil liberties, more violations of our economic liberties, doesn't matter. That's what your vote does, and it's indistinguishable from a vote from someone who's, an outright endorser of these candidates. The only way you change
the tacit endorsement
is by refusing to vote for more big government and only voting for small government libertarians. I do not sympathize with Greens. They want big government. They're good on a few issues, but even there, they're relatively weak compared to Libertarians. Libertarians have been much more trailblazers on the true civil libertarian issues than the Greens have been, I know, from first-hand experience. But that's how we change things, and it's simply a manipulation.
I'm gonna
vote for me, get my guy in office, and the only person who's going to benefit from that is your guy and their special interest pals. The everyday people will get the raw deal there. They will get nothing but more big government from that vote.
I have to qualify the big government. Part of the Green Party platform is wresting more control back to communities, municipalities over states, states over federal, wresting that power back, because we believe that, people who live in communities should decide how their communities are run. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Like that's part of our platform is making sure
that
this
local is always better whenever possible.
It's more flexible, it's more responsive, it's more transparent by nature. It's just a better way to run things.
That is absolutely true. Now, that's not to say that local governments aren't opaque. Even the ones that publish their budgets, my town in Wayland, Massachusetts, they had to submit for 2 years. Citizens in that town were submitting the state equivalent of Freedom of Information Act. They call it public records or something in Massachusetts. For 2 years, they had to submit these requests before they got them to admit and cough up the fact that they were sort of hiding $30 million. This is in a town of only 14,000 citizens. It's
Good God.
Small suburban town. And, that led to a tax cut because they kept saying, we don't have enough money, and raising taxes. It's one of the highest taxed towns in the state.
And this was Wayland, you said?
Wayland, Massachusetts.
Yep.
And this is not uncommon. There is money being hid off budget at all levels of government throughout this country, the federal government, the state governments. The state government's horrible, having led 3 ballot initiatives and also ran for state auditor and 2 other offices in Massachusetts. The off-budget spending that goes on in Massachusetts is almost as big as the so-called statutory budget, the one the newspapers talk about. And, they won't even, the big guilty party here, too, isn't just the politicians. It's the media that won't report this, that won't talk about it. They talk about the budget. Now at the federal level, one of their games is, instead of talking about the $4 trillion budget, which they occasionally fess up to, they've been talking about signing a $1 trillion bill, pretending like the only thing that matters is the stuff you can vote on. That's the same game they play in Massachusetts. The statutory budget is what the legislators vote on, and because the other off-budget spending has already been, by law, allocated, there even are freshman legislators who are not even aware of the money, okay? They're legislators, and they're not even aware.
Well,
they're only voting on half the budget.
You have to be in long enough to prove your allegiance before they give you the secret book, right?
It's unreal. So there is so much work to be done in exposing the amount of money, the assets, not to mention the actual outcomes of what's going on. And speaking to an earlier point about the altruism of libertarians, there's a lot of people, especially of the progressive persuasion, who want everyone to have health care, and they want the world to be at peace, and they want a lot of good things. But you can't really say you're being responsible in that claim unless you look at results. And this is where a lot of progressives like to kind of close their eyes and go, la, 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 because they don't want to look at what actually happens with Romney Care and Obamacare, not reading what you read in left-wing publications that try to glorify it all, but get the real facts about what government intervention in health care does and what real freedom in health care would do. I say what it would do is would cut costs by about 80% across the board, if not more, in some cases much more. It would make operations actually affordable to most people of average incomes and even a little less. It would make even catastrophic care manageable by a large percentage of the population that wouldn't even need insurance. And, of course, a lot of people still would want catastrophic insurance, but it would all be so much dramatically more affordable, so much dramatically higher quality. There'd be better outcomes, less suffering, longer lives if we got the government out of health care. Now, that takes a lot of studying to discover that. I spent years doing it. I had no political agenda whatsoever. I wasn't political at all back then. I just wanted to figure out how we can make things better. This is what progressives and anyone